All right, let's dive in. Today we're exploring hidden spiritual tests.
Ooh, sounds intriguing.
It is. We've got some really fascinating source material for this one. It almost lays these tests out like a map for your soul.
A map, huh? So like guiding you on your spiritual journey.
Exactly. And you know what's cool? The material doesn't frame these tests as roadblocks, but rather as opportunities
Opportunities for what?
for growth, for leveling up,
Oh,
spiritually speaking.
okay, I like that. So less obstacle course, more like, a cosmic training montage.
Haha, exactly. And we're talking about a whole range of tests here: detachment, faith, forgiveness, patience, the works.
Wow, the whole spiritual toolkit, it seems. So this source material, what's the main idea? Why these tests?
Well, it emphasizes that these tests aren't just random. They're very specific challenges designed to help you evolve.
Evolve spiritually, you mean?
Yes, it's like each test unlocks a deeper level of understanding, kind of like level 1, detachment, then level 2, and so on.
I'm starting to see the map analogy now. All right, so where do we begin? What's the first test?
Let's jump right in with the test of detachment. Now, you hear detachment, and you might think, okay, time to ditch all my possessions and live in a cave.
Uh-huh, yeah, the hermit life.
Right. But it sounds like it's not that simple.
No, I wouldn't think so. What is it about then?
Well, it's not about running away from the world. It's more about finding that inner freedom from clinging to things, possessions, outcomes, even people.
Ah, so it's more about changing your relationship to those things rather than necessarily getting rid of everything.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that everything is impermanent and finding peace in that impermanence.
That's deep. So where in your life might you be gripping too tightly? A job, a relationship, even a belief. Detachment could be the key to finding peace in those areas.
That's a great point. It's almost like instead of resisting the natural flow of life, you're learning to ride the waves, you know?
Yeah, I get that. Go with the flow.
Yeah.
So you said the source mentions connecting to the essence of life. What do you think that means?
That's a good question. What do you think that means for the listener?
I think it's about looking beyond the surface of things, you know, connecting with those core values, the things that truly guide your life.
Yeah, so it's almost like a decluttering process, but for your soul. You're letting go of the things that don't serve you to make space for what truly matters.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
by doing that, by letting go, you're opening yourself up to a deeper understanding of who you are.
I love that. It's like make space for what matters. Okay, on to the next test, faith. This one always feels a little mysterious to me.
Oh, how so?
It's like taking that leap of faith without knowing what's on the other side, you know?
Yeah.
Just trusting.
Yeah, the blind trust. So what does the source material say about this kind of faith? Is it like religious faith?
Actually, it says it's not just about religious belief, it's more about trusting the unseen forces of life. You know, that deep down belief that there's a bigger picture at play.
Even when things feel totally chaotic.
Even then, it's like a cosmic trust fall.
I love that analogy.
Oh, yeah.
Cosmic trust fall. But seriously, how do we develop that kind of trust? Life can be pretty unpredictable.
Great. How do we build that trust muscle?
Well, I think it's a combination of experience,
Yeah.
and a willingness to surrender control a bit. Like
Yeah.
every time you navigate something uncertain and you come out okay on the other side, it builds that trust a little more.
So it's like we learn to trust by going through those tough times and seeing that we can handle them.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what else the source mentions? Noticing those little miracles in your life, the synchronicities, the lucky breaks, the things that make you think, wow, what are the chances?
Oh, I totally believe in those little winks from the universe, like when you run into someone you were just thinking about.
Yes, things like that. They can be really powerful reminders that there's something bigger at play,
Yeah.
that we're not totally in control, and that's okay.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to a test. I think a lot of us struggle with forgiveness.
Yeah, that one's tough.
It can be really hard to forgive someone who's hurt you, right?
Yeah.
But the source material frames it as a way to release ourselves from the burden of anger and resentment.
So it's less about the other person and more about freeing yourself.
Exactly. The source emphasizes that forgiveness is not about condoning the action, but about freeing yourself from that negativity.
It's about acknowledging the hurt, but choosing to let go of the bitterness.
Right.
But that's easier said than done, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And the source material acknowledges that too. It talks about forgiveness being a process, a journey, not a quick fix, not just flipping a switch and everything's fine.
Right, it's a journey. They actually use the phrase persistent heart work, which I think is so powerful.
Persistent hard work. I love that. It really captures the effort that goes into healing and letting go. It's not a one-time thing. It takes time.
Absolutely. And it's about acknowledging those feelings, working through them, and then choosing to release yourself from that pain.
Okay, so forgiveness is a marathon, not a sprint. You need to pace yourself and be patient.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing to move forward with a lighter heart, you know?
I like that. Okay, let's talk about patience now. Patience seems like a lost art in our fast-paced world. Everyone wants everything instantly.
Right. Instant gratification everywhere you look.
Exactly. So how do we cultivate patience when everything around us screams, faster, faster?
Well, the source material highlights that patience isn't about passively waiting. It's about actively cultivating peace when things aren't going your way.
So it's about embracing the journey, not just fixating on the destination,
Yeah.
right? Learning to find joy in the process.
Precisely. And you know what? The source even suggests that impatience often stems from fear.
Fear of what?
Fear of missing out. Fear of not being in control.
Oh, that makes sense. So by cultivating patience, we can actually overcome some of those fears.
Exactly. And find more peace in the present moment rather than constantly worrying about what's next.
I love that. It's like that saying, what's for you won't pass you by. Trusting the timing of your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, what about true understanding? We've all heard of like getting it on an intellectual level.
Right. Like, oh, I understand the concept, but is there more to it?
Yes. The source material emphasizes empathy as a key part of true understanding. It's about connecting with someone's experience on an emotional level, even if you don't agree with them.
So it's like stepping into their shoes and seeing the world through their eyes, not just understanding it with your head.
Precisely. The source suggests that we can cultivate true understanding through things like active listening and being genuinely curious. And it's about having conversations with people who are different from you, you know, people who hold different beliefs.
It's like that saying, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Yeah.
Being open-minded and willing to learn.
Yes. And the source says that these conversations, they can be challenging sometimes.
Yeah.
But they're also incredibly rewarding.
Because they can open your mind to new perspectives, right?
Yeah.
And help you grow as a person.
Exactly. Okay, this next test feels particularly relevant in our constantly connected world. Solitude.
Oh, yeah, solitude. Everyone's always on their phone, on social media.
Right. And the source material really emphasizes the importance of carving out time for solitude in today's world. It's about being comfortable, being alone with your own thoughts without distractions.
So no phone, no social media, just being present with yourself.
Exactly. It's about tuning into your inner voice, you know, reflecting on your life and where you're headed.
Like hitting the pause button on the constant stream of information and just allowing yourself to be.
Yes. And the source says that in those moments of quiet reflection, you can actually connect with your intuition, process your emotions, and gain a deeper understanding of yourself.
It's like those times when you take a walk in nature or just sit in silence for a bit. It can feel so grounding.
Absolutely. Even just incorporating a few minutes of silent meditation each day, it can do wonders. Think about it. How do you feel when you're alone with your own thoughts? Do you reach for your phone or can you sit with that stillness?
That's a great question for our listeners to reflect on. How do you relate to solitude? Do you see it as something to avoid or something to embrace?
Exactly. And remember, solitude isn't about isolating yourself from the world completely. It's about creating space for yourself, for recharging and reconnecting with your inner wisdom.
I love that. Okay, what about integrity? What does it mean to live with integrity from a spiritual perspective?
Well, the source material defines integrity as aligning your actions with your values, even when it's hard.
So it's like walking your talk,
Yeah.
right? Your words and your actions match up with your core beliefs.
Exactly. And the source highlights that integrity is often tested in those situations where you have to make a difficult choice. It could be at work, in relationships, even just in your daily interactions.
So it's about those moments where you have to choose between doing what's easy and doing what you know is right, even if it's hard.
Yes. And those choices, those moments where you stand up for what you believe in, even when it's challenging, those are the moments that really define your character.
And they strengthen your integrity, right? It's like each time you choose integrity, you build up that trust in yourself.
Absolutely. And that trust is crucial for navigating these other spiritual tests that we're talking about.
It gives you that solid foundation, that inner strength.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And helps you face whatever comes your way with more courage and authenticity. Welcome back. It's fascinating how these spiritual tests we've been discussing, they all seem to connect, don't they?
They do. Like they're all pieces of a bigger puzzle.
Hmm.
And each one reveals a little more about, who we are and what we're meant to become.
Exactly. And as we're going through them, it's becoming clear that these tests, they're not punishments.
No, definitely not.
They're more like, opportunities disguised as challenges.
Opportunities for growth, for
Yeah,
transformation.
exactly. It's like, okay, remember that cosmic boot camp analogy?
Yeah, I like that one.
It's like boot camp for the soul. Each test is a workout, making you stronger and wiser.
I like that. Okay, so thinking back to detachment,
Yeah.
we talked about letting go of things, outcomes, even people. But how do we do that without becoming, apathetic or like emotionally detached? It seems tricky.
It is a fine line. And the source material talks about that. True detachment. It's not about suppressing your emotions or disconnecting from the world. It's more about shifting your perspective.
So finding that inner peace that can't be shaken by external things, but not losing the ability to feel joy, to connect with others?
Yes. The source actually calls this equanimity. It's like a state of mental calmness, even when there's chaos around you.
Oh, I like that. Equanimity, it's like being the eye of the hurricane. Everything's swirling around you, but at the center, there's stillness.
Perfect analogy.
Hmm.
That's the power of these tests, right? Refining our inner strength, helping us handle challenges with more, grace and wisdom, becoming more, truly ourselves in the process.
Okay, let's shift to faith for a moment.
Okay.
We talked about it being like a cosmic trust fall. But what about those times when you're falling and it feels like there's no one to catch you? When doubt creeps in and your faith wavers?
Those moments are inevitable for sure. The
Yeah.
source acknowledges that. Your faith will be tested. Absolutely.
And it's scary. Like, what do you do when those doubts start swirling?
Well, what's interesting is the source suggests those periods of doubt, they can actually lead to even greater spiritual growth if you let them.
Really? So doubt can make your faith stronger.
It can. Because it forces you to, dig deep, to connect with something beyond your limited human understanding.
So it's like doubt can actually refine your faith, make it more resilient.
Yeah, I think so. It's about embracing the unknown and trusting that even when it's dark, there's still, a light guiding you forward.
Now let's talk about forgiveness again. We mentioned it's a process, not a quick fix. But what does that process actually look like?
Well, the source material lays out some interesting steps. The first one is understanding. Forgiveness, it actually begins with recognizing that the person who hurt you, they were likely acting from their own pain.
So it's not about excusing their actions.
No, not at all. But it's about understanding, seeing them with compassion, recognizing that we're all human, we all make mistakes.
It's about that shared humanity, even when someone does something wrong.
Exactly. And that recognition, it can be really healing because it can help release some of that anger and resentment. Another important point the source brings up is self-compassion. Often, forgiveness involves forgiving yourself too.
Forgiving yourself, what do you mean?
Well, sometimes we hold ourselves to impossible standards. We beat ourselves up for past mistakes.
Oh, yeah, totally. I'm really good at that.
Right. But forgiveness is also about letting go of that guilt and shame and moving forward with more self-love.
It's like giving yourself the same compassion you'd give to someone else.
Exactly. Because we're all works in progress, right?
Yeah.
We're all imperfect, and that's okay.
Okay, switching gears a bit. We talked about patience before. How do we cultivate patience in a world that's all about instant gratification?
That's the challenge, isn't it? But true patience, as the source material points out, it's not about just waiting passively or giving up.
So it's more than just like gritting your teeth and bearing it.
Exactly. It's about actively cultivating the sense of peace and acceptance, even when things are, delayed or not going your way.
So it's more of a mental shift, like choosing to be okay with the not yet moments.
Exactly. The source encourages us to recognize that things unfold in their own time. Trying to force things often just leads to more stress.
Right. You can't rush a good thing, as they say.
Exactly. And you know what can really help with that? Practicing mindfulness.
Oh, mindfulness. That's come up a few times now.
It's a powerful tool because when you're more present, more aware of your thoughts and feelings, you're less likely to get swept away by that impatience, that frustration.
So mindfulness helps create space for patience to grow.
Exactly. Okay, let's revisit true understanding. Empathy is key, but how do we actually move beyond intellectual understanding to that deeper, more heartfelt connection with others?
It's a good question. Because it's one thing to understand something logically, but it's another to really feel it, right?
Right. And the source emphasizes active listening as a key part of this. Truly hearing and trying to understand another person's perspective,
Even if you disagree with them.
especially if you disagree with them. It's about setting aside those judgments and being open to the possibility that you might learn something new.
Ah, so being curious, open-minded, rather than defensive or dismissive.
Exactly. And that curiosity, that openness, it can lead to some really profound insights and connections. You start to see the world through different lenses.
It's like those conversations that leave you thinking, wow, I've never thought about it that way before.
Exactly. Okay, let's talk about solitude again. In a world that's constantly vying for our attention, how do we make time for solitude?
Right, it's like everyone's competing for your attention.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be intentional about creating boundaries. Setting aside time for yourself, even just a few minutes each day.
So, turning off the phone, stepping away from the screens, finding a quiet space.
Exactly. It might involve just sitting in silence, going for a walk in nature, anything that allows you to disconnect from the external world and reconnect with yourself.
And why is solitude so important in the context of these spiritual tests?
The source material lists a bunch of benefits. Reduce stress, improve focus, a deeper understanding of yourself. In those quiet moments, you can connect with your intuition, process your emotions, gain clarity.
It's like giving yourself permission to just be. No demands, no expectations, just existing in the moment.
Exactly. And that space is so crucial for our well-being. It allows us to hear the whispers of our soul to find a deeper sense of peace.
Okay, back to integrity. We talked about aligning your actions with your values, but what happens when we mess up? When we fall short of our own ideals?
Well, that's part of being human, right? None of us are perfect, and we're bound to make mistakes.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about striving to do the right thing.
Exactly. And the source emphasizes that it's about being honest with yourself when you do mess up, acknowledging the mistake and learning from it.
So taking responsibility for your actions, even when you regret them.
Yes. And that humility, that accountability, it's so important for growth. It allows us to learn and become better versions of ourselves.
Okay, let's explore compassion. We've talked about empathy and turning that into action. But how do we cultivate more compassion in a world that often feels so divided?
It's a challenge for sure. But the source material encourages being intentional about it, like practicing random acts of kindness, volunteering, just making an effort to connect with people who are different from you.
So expanding our circle of compassion, reaching out to those who we might not naturally connect with.
Exactly. And that's so important, not just for our own spiritual growth, but for the world as a whole.
It's about recognizing our shared humanity, even amidst our differences.
Beautifully said. Okay, let's talk about perseverance. How do you keep going when things get tough?
Right, because these tests, they're not always easy. There are going to be setbacks, moments of doubt.
Absolutely. But the source reminds us that perseverance comes from believing in the journey, even when it's hard. Remembering why you started on this path and holding on to that vision.
So even when you can't see the destination clearly, you trust that you're heading in the right direction.
Exactly. And you know what else helps? Cultivating resilience. That ability to bounce back from setbacks. The source even suggests finding inspiration in the stories of others who have overcome big challenges.
Oh, I love those kinds of stories. They remind you that anything is possible if you don't give up.
Exactly. Inspiration can fuel our own perseverance.
They do.
Okay, let's wrap up with humility. We talked about it being about recognizing that we're part of something bigger.
But how do you cultivate humility in a culture that's all about, self-promotion and individual achievement? It seems like humility is kind of countercultural.
It is, and that's what makes it so important. True humility. It's not about diminishing yourself or downplaying your accomplishments. It's about recognizing that your achievements are often the result of many factors. Support from others, luck, timing, all of it.
So it's about acknowledging that you don't achieve anything in isolation. We're all interconnected.
Precisely. And that recognition, it fosters gratitude and humility.
Mm.
One thing the source suggests is practicing gratitude. When you focus on the good in your life and acknowledge the contributions of others, it's easier to let go of that ego.
So humility is tied to gratitude.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
They reinforce each other. Okay, lastly, joy. How do we cultivate joy in a world that often feels so heavy and serious?
Right, because joy is different from just happiness, right? It's deeper than that.
Yes, true joy, it's a deep sense of peace and contentment that comes from within. It's about finding joy in the simple things, in the present moment, in connection.
So it's not about chasing happiness, it's about cultivating joy from within.
Exactly. And the source mentions some amazing benefits of cultivating joy. It boosts your immune system, improves your well-being, even strengthens your relationships.
Wow, joy is good for you.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it makes the journey so much more enjoyable, right?
Welcome back to our deep dive. We've been exploring these hidden spiritual tests, uncovering what they're all about, why we face them.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. We've covered so
We
much.
have from detachment to joy. And it's fascinating how, these tests aren't just isolated things, they're all connected.
They are like threads woven together, creating the tapestry of our spiritual journey.
Love that analogy. It's like we've been assembling this spiritual toolkit. Each test gives us a new skill, a new insight.
Exactly, equipping us to navigate life. But here's the thing. How do we actually use this toolkit?
Right, because awareness is great, but it's only the beginning.
Totally. Our listener might be thinking, okay, all this is interesting, but what do I do with it?
Yeah, how do we take all this knowledge and actually put it into practice? How do we translate it into real growth?
Well, the source material emphasizes that just becoming aware of these tests is a huge step. It's like suddenly you have a map.
A map for your spiritual journey.
Exactly. You can anticipate the challenges, understand why you're facing them.
So it's like we've given our listeners X-ray vision. They can see those hidden tests that might have been tripping them up before.
Precisely. And by recognizing them, you can approach them differently.
Right.
You can choose to see them as opportunities, not just obstacles.
But let's be honest, some of these tests, they're really tough, like forgiveness. How do we actually put that into practice?
That's where the real work comes in. And the source offers some guidance. It talks about cultivating certain qualities that help you navigate these tests, like self-awareness.
Ah, knowing yourself, your patterns, your reactions.
Exactly. The more you understand yourself, the better equipped you are to recognize when you're being tested. And then you can make conscious choices.
So it's like becoming a spiritual detective and investigating your own inner world.
I like that. And another big one is mindfulness. Being present, aware of your thoughts and feelings.
Oh, mindfulness keeps coming up.
It's so essential.
Hmm.
Because when you're mindful, you're less likely to just react impulsively. You have that space to choose how you respond.
It's like hitting that pause button before you react.
Exactly. It gives you more control. Okay, so self-awareness, mindfulness. What else?
What else does the source recommend?
It also talks about seeking support, having people you can turn to for guidance and encouragement, a trusted friend, a mentor, a spiritual community.
Yeah, so you don't have to go it alone.
Exactly. We all need support, especially when things get tough. That connection can be so powerful.
Okay, any other pro tips?
One of my favorites from the source is the idea of embracing the journey. These tests aren't supposed to be easy. There will be ups and downs.
Setbacks, challenges, the whole shebang.
Exactly. So be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and remember that growth is a process.
It's not about reaching the destination, it's about who you become along the way.
Beautifully said. All right, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the final takeaway, that question that will stick with our listeners?
Let's see. What will make them think?
I think it's this. Now that you've learned about these hidden spiritual tests, which one is calling out to you most strongly right now? What is it trying to teach you?
Ooh, that's a good one. It brings it back to the personal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because these tests, they're not just abstract ideas. They're happening in our lives all the time.
Right. And by paying attention, by recognizing them, we can learn and grow so much.
Absolutely. And remember, you're not alone in this. We all face these tests in different ways. But we can support each other, share our experiences, and learn together.
That's a beautiful thought. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into hidden spiritual tests. We hope you enjoyed exploring this topic with us.
Yes, and we hope it sparks continued curiosity and exploration on your own spiritual journey. Thanks for joining us.